The cosmic question. In the gentle hush of twilight, the stars began their soft ascent into the night sky, flickering like ancient thoughts just now surfacing. Deep in a quiet observatory nestled among whispering pines, the sleepy scientist adjusted her glasses, a steaming mug of chamomile tea beside her. She often stayed up late, not from sleeplessness, but from wonder. Tonight's question lingered in the air like a lullaby on the edge of sleep: does space ever end? The observatory dome creaked open slowly, revealing the ink-black heavens above. With a yawn and a stretch, she turned her telescope skyward, scanning through constellations she'd long memorized: Orion, Cassiopeia, and the soft sprawl of the Milky Way. To many, the vastness of space feels overwhelming. But to her, it was comforting. Like a lullaby sung by the universe itself. She believed that somewhere in the stars, the secrets of endlessness whispered gently, like leaves stirred by midnight breezes. She began recording her thoughts in her soft leather journal. What does it mean for space to end? She wrote in delicate script. Would there be a wall? A border? Or is it more like a dream, going on, not needing edges at all? She leaned back in her chair, feeling the rhythm of the universe echo in her breath. Just like the wind has no beginning or end, perhaps space was the same. Infinite, expanding quietly, like the stretch between stars. Outside, the forest was still. No cars. No voices. Just the chirping of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. The peaceful rhythm of the night wrapped around her like a quilt of starlight. She thought about ancient stargazers, Babylonian priests and Egyptian astronomers, who once looked up at the same skies, their hearts full of the same question. Did they imagine space was a dome? A great canopy painted by gods? Or did they, too, wonder if it stretched beyond imagination? As sleep began to tug gently at her thoughts, the sleepy scientist closed her eyes for just a moment. In that moment, she dreamed. She was floating, weightless, through space. Not racing. Not falling. Just drifting, peacefully, past planets, moons, comets. Stars greeted her like old friends. She passed through nebulas that glowed like watercolor clouds. She wasn't scared, she was home. A voice, soft and slow, echoed through the stardust. The question isn't whether space ends. The question is, does curiosity? She smiled in her dream, heart warm and calm. When she woke, her tea was still warm, and the stars were still there, watching, waiting, twinkling. She scribbled in her journal again. Maybe space doesn't end. Maybe it simply continues, like imagination. And that is enough for tonight. As her eyelids fluttered closed, the telescope turned itself gently toward the horizon, ready for tomorrow's question. Expanding dreams and cosmic ripples. Night fell once again, gentle as a lullaby. The air was cool, carrying the faintest scent of pine and the damp hush of evening dew. Inside the quiet observatory, the sleepy scientist sat curled in her oversized chair, wrapped in a wool blanket, journal open in her lap. The telescope, silent and steady, was already scanning the heavens. Tonight, her thoughts drifted to something vast and invisible: expansion. From the moment she awoke that morning, the question had fluttered behind her thoughts like a curious moth drawn to light: if space doesn't end, does it grow? She poured herself a small cup of peppermint tea and whispered softly, how does something infinite expand? Outside, the stars blinked through the dark. Above her head, galaxies were moving, so slowly, so silently, but always outward. She imagined them like ripples on a pond, ever widening, forever flowing. She turned to a dusty book on her shelf and flipped to a page marked long ago with a pressed leaf. The Theory of the Expanding Universe. Discovered in the 20th century, confirmed again and again. The scientist smiled, eyes twinkling. It's as if space itself is breathing, she whispered. In and out, slow and gentle. She leaned back and closed her eyes. And once again, she dreamed. In her dream, she floated not through blackness, but through motion. Endless, soft, quiet motion. Galaxies moved away from her, not because she was falling, but because the very space between them was stretching, like dough rising slowly in an oven warmed by ancient starlight. She passed galaxies shaped like spirals, ovals, and fuzzy clouds. They drifted apart like dancers on a stage too vast to ever touch. There was no wind, no sound, but a feeling, like the hush of a library filled with cosmic secrets. And then, she saw it, a pulse. A single glowing thread, stretching outward from a central point. The Big Bang, long ago, still echoing through every atom of the universe. She opened her journal in the dream and scribbled, "The universe is not just expanding, it's becoming." When she awoke, the tea was still warm. The telescope was quietly clicking, adjusting. The universe hadn't stopped moving. It never would. She thought about how even in the silence, space grew. Not like a balloon inflating into something else, but like the idea of a balloon inflating itself, pulling more reality into being with each quiet breath. She looked out the window, where a shooting star streaked briefly across the sky. "It's still growing," she said with a sleepy smile. "And so am I." With that, she set her pen down, closed her journal, and let the night cradle her into dreams once more. The horizon we cannot see. The sky was unusually clear tonight. The sleepy scientist stepped outside, a mug of warm honey milk in her hands, and tilted her head back to take in the stars. They glittered like ancient secrets, scattered across an endless canvas. But even as she admired their glow, her mind wandered toward a quieter mystery, the edge of what we can know. Inside her observatory, pages of notes sat undisturbed. Drawings of galaxies, measurements of redshifts, diagrams of gravitational curvature, each one a clue. But tonight, she wasn't looking for proof. She was listening for something more delicate than fact, a whisper of understanding. She sat in her chair, wrapped in her soft wool blanket, and posed her question aloud. If the universe is still expanding, is there a place beyond which we can't ever see? She opened her journal and wrote softly. There's something called the observable universe, but what lies beyond it? As sleep slowly folded her into dreams, she found herself floating once more, weightless and quiet in the void. Ahead of her stretched a vast cosmic ocean. Behind her, stars, galaxies, quasars, even echoing flashes from the universe's birth. But ahead, there was darkness. Not emptiness, just unreachable distance. She approached a strange shimmering veil. A horizon not made of matter, but of limitation. A boundary not drawn by fences or walls, but by time itself. Her dream self whispered, "This is the edge of the observable universe." Because light takes time to travel, and the universe is expanding, there are places from which light has not, and may never, reach us. Those regions lie beyond this veil. Galaxies drifting too fast, too far. Forever outside our view. Forever beyond our knowing. She reached toward the horizon, but it shimmered and faded like mist. It isn't a wall, she thought. It's a shadow cast by time. A gentle voice in her dream, soft like wind through tall grass, said, "The universe is vast, but your mind can stretch even farther." She awoke just before dawn, as the eastern sky began to pale. The moon hung low, and the stars had begun to retreat. Back at her desk, she scribbled one last thought before sleep overtook her again. Some questions don't need answers, they just need space to rest within. And as her eyes closed once more, the last thing she felt was wonder. The shape of the infinite. The sleepy scientist had always been fascinated not just with the stars, but with the in-between. Tonight, her warm quilt draped over her shoulders, she sat before a glowing fireplace with a fresh journal page and an old question. What shape is the universe? And, if it has a shape, does that mean it has an edge? She smiled to herself. It was a question as old as wonder itself. Soon, as the flames crackled and the air grew heavy with rest, she began to drift. The pages of her journal blurred, and she entered that soft space between waking and sleep. And in that dreaming place, she found herself not in her observatory, but in a strange and quiet realm, a smooth, endless meadow lit by stars that curved subtly along the horizon. She wandered through this starlit plain, and above her head, galaxies didn't move in straight lines. They arced gently, following invisible paths as though pulled by unseen strings. She knelt and touched the grass. It was cool and still. Then, suddenly, she looked up and saw herself, far away, walking toward her. But, how? She stood still and waited. As the figure approached, it mirrored her every movement until it stood face to face with her. It was her, but from behind. As if she had walked in a giant loop and come full circle. That's when she understood. The universe might not be infinite in a straight line. It could curve, like the surface of a globe or the skin of a balloon. In this dreamy, floating world, voices of science spoke gently into her thoughts. There are three possibilities, they said. If the universe curves inward, it's closed like a sphere. Travel far enough, and you return to where you began. If it's flat, it stretches forever without curving. And if it curves outward, it's open, expanding endlessly like a saddle riding across nothingness. But which was it? In her dream, she looked up again at the stars, spinning in their subtle arcs. Maybe it doesn't matter, she whispered. Maybe space isn't a place to reach the end of, but a shape we live inside of, like fish in an ocean without shores. She awoke to a pale morning light peeking through the curtains, her notebook now resting softly on her lap. She turned to a fresh page and wrote. We ask if the universe ends, but maybe it just turns inward on itself, like a lullaby looping gently through time. And with that, she closed her journal and returned to her pillow, comforted by the thought that some infinities are curved, and perfectly peaceful. A universe on the move. The morning passed like a whisper. Clouds drifted lazily across the sky outside the observatory dome, while the sleepy scientist brewed herself a warm cup of lavender tea. She wrapped herself in a soft gray shawl, opened her notebook, and whispered, if the universe moves, where is it going? It was a question that made her heart flutter with curiosity. So many people believed space was still, like a canvas on which stars were painted. But in truth, the universe was always changing, always moving. She leaned back in her cozy chair, the hum of a space heater lulling her into a calm, weightless drowsiness. And once again, she slipped quietly into that twilight space between wakefulness and dreaming. This time, she found herself drifting among galaxies, each glowing like floating lanterns in a vast cosmic ocean. There was no wind, no sound, only the gentle sensation of drifting. But then she noticed, the galaxies weren't still. They were all moving. Away from each other. Some darted fast, others drifted slowly, but all were expanding outward as if something invisible were pulling the universe apart. In her dream, a wise old astronomer appeared beside her, cloaked in stars. His beard shimmered like the tail of a comet. The universe, he said gently, is stretching. Like dough rising in an oven. Space itself expands, and the galaxies ride along. But what caused it to stretch, she asked. The old man smiled, motioning toward the void behind him. Long ago, in the moment of the Big Bang, everything we see and know, every atom, every ray of light, was born in a single, searing moment. Since then, the universe has been expanding, not into something, but stretching itself. She blinked. So space isn't inside something else? No, the astronomer chuckled, space doesn't expand into anything. It simply becomes more of itself. As galaxies drifted farther and farther apart, she began to feel an ache in her chest. Would the stars eventually disappear from one another? Would the night sky grow lonely? The astronomer seemed to sense her worry. Even as we drift, he whispered, we are still part of the same story. Every particle remembers the moment we were all together. Distance cannot erase belonging. She opened her eyes slowly, the tea now lukewarm beside her, the world still and soft. A blue jay called gently from a tree outside, and her notebook sat waiting. She wrote. The universe isn't running away. It's dancing outward, carried by an ancient breath we'll never quite catch, but can always feel. And she smiled, knowing that in a moving universe, every moment matters. The cosmic horizon. Evening sunlight spilled into the observatory, warm and gold. The sleepy scientist sat cross-legged on her favorite cushion beneath the telescope dome, her fingers gently brushing the edge of a star chart. Outside, a crescent moon blinked between wisps of lavender clouds. The air held that deep quiet of twilight, the moment just before the sky remembers how to sparkle. She opened her journal and posed the next question aloud. If the universe is expanding, is there a place where it ends? It was the kind of question that carried her gently to sleep. In the dream, she found herself floating at the edge of a vast cosmic ocean, where stars glimmered like driftwood and time swayed like seaweed. In the distance, something shimmered, like a curtain of light drawn across the sky. She drifted closer. It was the cosmic horizon, the farthest edge of the observable universe. She didn't need a rocket ship to be here. In this dream space, she moved with the curiosity of thought and the gentleness of sleep. A glowing guide appeared, shaped like a constellation come to life, formed of stardust and moonlight. It spoke without sound, its voice like a breeze inside her mind. What you see, it whispered, isn't the end of the universe. It's only the limit of what light has had time to reach you. She tilted her head, puzzled. The guide continued. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. And light travels fast, but not infinitely fast. That means you can only see as far as light has had time to travel since the beginning. She looked out at the horizon again, watching galaxies at the very edge flicker like fireflies. So the universe could go on far beyond this horizon? She asked. The guide nodded, its eyes like binary stars. Exactly. Beyond this boundary may lie more stars, more galaxies, perhaps even things we cannot imagine. But we cannot see them, not yet. Perhaps not ever. The sleepy scientist marveled. The edge wasn't a wall, it was a curtain of time. And it moved as the universe aged. Every moment brought the curtain further outward, revealing more and more of the cosmic story. As she drifted back through the starlit dream space, she whispered. So the edge of what we know, is only the beginning of what we might someday know. She awoke to the soft chirp of night birds. Outside, Venus twinkled above the hills. The universe hadn't ended in her sleep, it had grown larger in her heart. She scribbled softly in her notebook. There may be no edge to space, only the gentle horizon of understanding. And it moves with us. The infinite room. The night was velvet soft, with rain tapping gently on the rooftop of the observatory like a lullaby in Morse code. The sleepy scientist sat wrapped in her favorite blue shawl, sipping chamomile tea, a galaxy print journal balanced on her knees. Tonight's question hovered in her mind like a candle in the dark. If space doesn't end, could it be infinite? She dozed off beside a telescope window, lulled by the sound of rain and distant thunderclouds. In her dream, she found herself standing inside a magnificent hall. It was vast and quiet, with mirrored walls that reflected her image endlessly in every direction. She took a few slow steps and glanced at her reflection. Then another. And another. Each image shimmered and bent slightly, echoing her movements until the reflections blurred into infinity. From the silence came a low, melodic hum. A glowing figure formed from folded starlight and soft equations emerged from behind a tall mirror. It looked like a librarian of the cosmos, with constellations twinkling across its robe. It gestured with a nebula-tipped finger and spoke. You are inside a metaphor. A mirror room to imagine space. Does it feel infinite? She nodded. It does. But I know this room has walls. The guide smiled gently. Yes. And space might, too. Or, it might not. That's one of the great mysteries. They walked together through the endless hall of mirrors. The sleepy scientist asked, "What would an infinite universe really mean?" The guide turned to a mirror, and within it appeared swirling galaxies, stretching beyond sight. It would mean no edge. No center. Just endless space, and endless possibility. She gazed into the reflection, seeing galaxies nested within galaxies, like petals within a rose. "But how can we know?" she asked softly. The figure's voice was like wine through a telescope dome. "We may never know for certain. Our tools can only reach so far. But the patterns we observe." Cosmic microwave background, the way galaxies are arranged, they suggest the universe could be flat and infinite. The sleepy scientist watched as stars in the mirrors spun like tiny dancers. And what if the universe is not infinite, she wondered aloud. The guide chuckled gently. Then it might curve back on itself like the surface of a globe. You could, in theory, travel far enough in one direction and return to where you started, like walking around a planet. Her eyes widened with sleepy wonder. So whether infinite or curved, there's still no edge? Precisely, the guide said, vanishing into a ripple of starlight. She stirred awake just as the rain stopped. The air smelled of wet earth and moonlight. She wrote in her notebook. Space may be infinite, or simply unbounded. Either way, it welcomes every wondering mind. Echoes from the beginning. It was another peaceful night at the observatory, and the sleepy scientist stood at her telescope, staring at the patch of sky that held the faint whisper of time itself. She was searching not for stars or planets, but for a memory. The cosmic microwave background. The universe's baby picture. As she drifted into sleep in the cozy, red armchair by the window, she dreamt of floating far beyond her observatory, beyond the solar system, past spiraling galaxies, until she hovered in a quiet space filled with soft static and gentle color, like an old television screen tuned to nothing. She was inside the afterglow of creation. A glowing orb appeared beside her, a warm, humming presence. "This is the oldest light in the universe," it said kindly. "It's been traveling for nearly 14 billion years." She marveled as the foggy light shifted, revealing ripples, tiny differences in temperature and density. "These faint echoes," said the orb, "are what tell us about the shape, age, and fate of the cosmos." The sleepy scientist felt weightless, as though time itself wrapped around her like a soft scarf. She asked, "What do these echoes tell us?" The orb glowed brighter. That the universe was once a hot, dense soup of particles. That it has expanded, cooled, and stretched ever since. They floated together through the haze of ancient light, and in it she saw the birth of atoms, the first stars igniting, galaxies forming, and dark matter threading through it all like invisible lace. The orb spoke again. "The universe leaves behind messages for those who listen slowly." She smiled. "And to think this soft static holds the secrets of beginnings." Back in her observatory chair, she stirred and reached for her notebook, still half asleep. She wrote with heavy, dreaming hands. "The universe hums with memory. And in its quiet, the past still speaks. Gravity's quiet pull." Tonight, the observatory was wrapped in a hush so deep that even the stars seemed to whisper. The sleepy scientist sipped warm tea from her moon-patterned mug and gazed thoughtfully at a hanging model of the solar system. The planets spun gently in slow circles, each obeying an invisible command. "Gravity," she murmured, "the unseen composer of the cosmic symphony." As her eyes grew heavy, she leaned back in her cozy chair. The wooden floor creaked as if exhaling. Her mind slipped softly into a dream, and she found herself floating just above a shimmering black ocean, the fabric of space. A glimmering apple, golden and weightless, floated by. Then another. Then thousands. "Where am I?" she asked. A voice answered, old and gentle. "You are in the presence of gravity, the great weaver of the universe." A great sphere emerged in the dark, a planet forming from dust and rock, pulled together by gravity's embrace. "You are watching attraction in its purest form," said the voice. "Stars ignite because of it. Moons dance around planets because of it. Galaxies swirl like ballerinas because gravity calls them home." The sleepy scientist felt herself drift toward a vast ripple in space. A black hole, silent, patient, not angry or violent, but deeply, infinitely hungry. She hovered nearby, safe but close enough to see time stretch. A clock near the black hole ticked slower than one far away. It was as if the closer you were, the more time melted into syrup. "Gravity," the voice whispered, "is not just a pull. It bends time, curves space, and shapes everything you see." Stars clustered together. Galaxies collided in graceful arcs. A lone comet curved beautifully around a distant sun, its icy tail trailing like a silken scarf. She watched it all, this elegant cosmic ballet, feeling both small and deeply connected. When she awoke, her notebook was open in her lap. She wrote sleepily. Gravity doesn't shout. It leans in, whispering, folding time and space into the arms of wonder. The cosmic microwave whisper. The sleepy scientist stood beside an old radio dish, its surface cold with dew under the starlit sky. It hummed faintly, always listening. Tonight, it wasn't just the stars above that fascinated her, but the echoes beneath everything. She closed her eyes and imagined tuning into the most ancient whisper the universe had ever spoken. And as her thoughts slipped deeper into stillness, she began to dream. She was no longer standing on the earth, but instead drifting in an endless, cool void. Around her were no stars, no planets, only darkness, deep and vast. But within that darkness was a soft hum. Not music. Not speech. A low, gentle vibration, steady and serene. Then, from behind her, a glowing wave approached, faint, golden, warm like morning light. It moved not as light does, but as memory. She turned toward it and felt it pass through her. "What is that?" she asked the darkness. A voice as smooth as space itself responded. "That is the oldest light you'll ever meet. The leftover warmth of the Big Bang. We call it the cosmic microwave background." The light wasn't bright, but it was everywhere. A soft glow from the beginning of time itself, more than 13 billion years old, still drifting gently through space. This light, the voice explained, was born when the universe was only 380,000 years old, just a baby. The sleepy scientist floated calmly, watching this subtle fog of photons stretch across all of existence, like a blanket laid carefully over the cosmos. She saw it shimmering behind galaxies, curling in the spaces between stars, holding a record of how the universe expanded, cooled, and changed. Even now, the voice continued, every room, every space, every breath you take is touched by this light. We are all part of its journey. She smiled, understanding now why scientists called it a snapshot of the early universe. As she returned to her body and opened her eyes, the radio dish still hummed softly, picking up the background hiss of the cosmos, the lingering heat from creation. She reached for her notebook and wrote. Even silence remembers. Galaxies on the move. It was a calm night in the observatory. Outside the window, stars twinkled with their usual quiet confidence. But the sleepy scientist was pondering a strange truth: the universe is not still. In fact, it's rushing outward, everything, everywhere, all at once. She rested her head back in her chair, closed her eyes, and began to drift. In her dream, she stood atop a glowing grid stretching out in all directions, like a boundless map of the universe. All around her were galaxies, some spiral-shaped and majestic, others elliptical and ancient, and still others swirling like ghostly pinwheels. They sparkled like lanterns in an endless night. And they were all moving. Some floated calmly. Others sped like comets across the vast map. Red light trailed behind them like sleepy smoke, and that red hue held a story. Just then, a voice, ancient and patient, whispered through the space. Do you see their red glow? It's called redshift. The farther they are, the faster they flee. The universe is expanding. She floated alongside the galaxies and could feel the stretch of space itself. It was as if the fabric beneath her feet was being gently tugged apart, not because the galaxies were flying through space, but because space itself was growing between them. One galaxy turned toward her, its voice like wine through pine trees. We are not rushing away from you out of fear. We are riding the very wave of time and space expanding beneath us. She looked around, trying to find the edge of it all, but there was none. Galaxies kept moving outward, carried by the invisible motion of the cosmos. And still the question echoed in her heart. If everything is rushing outward, where is it going? She floated back down to earth gently, her breath deep and calm. The question remained unanswered, like so many mysteries in the universe. But that was the beauty of it. She opened her notebook slowly and wrote. Motion in silence. Distance without direction. Expansion without end. The cosmic horizon. The sleepy scientist settled into her soft chair, wrapped in a knitted blanket that still smelled faintly of lavender. Outside her window, the stars glittered, cold and bright. As she closed her eyes, her thoughts drifted beyond the stars, toward the edge of knowing. She found herself walking along a shoreline, not of water, but of light. A glowing tide lapped at her feet, not with waves, but with whispers of ancient photons, each carrying a story from the farthest corners of the universe. Above her stretched the night sky, and out there, far beyond even the most distant galaxies, shimmered a faint, curved line. A horizon. A voice, slow, soft, and wise, spoke without sound. This is the cosmic horizon. The farthest we can ever see. Not because there's nothing beyond it, but because light from those places hasn't had enough time to reach us. She stepped forward, mesmerized. The space beyond the horizon was not dark, it was simply unknown. Hidden behind time itself. As she moved along the glowing boundary, she saw memories written in starlight, moments from the early universe. A galaxy forming. A star being born. A planet cooling for the first time. Every flicker in the sky was an old photograph, captured by the universe and sent traveling through space. You see, the voice continued, the farther we look, the further back in time we see. Beyond this horizon lies more, but we can't know it yet. It's like trying to read a book whose pages haven't been printed. She touched the edge of the cosmic light and smiled. The universe was whispering secrets, even if some were just out of reach. Back in her chair, she stirred. The clock ticked softly. She scribbled a single sentence into her notebook before falling asleep again. The edge of sight is not the end of existence. The shape of the universe. In the quiet of her cozy observatory, the sleepy scientist laid her head back and stared up at the domed ceiling, where a soft projection of stars spun slowly. A warm breeze from the heater puffed gently at her notes. Tonight's question wasn't about stars or planets, but about the shape of everything. What does space look like? Not just the stars and the galaxies within it, but space itself. What shape does everything take? She imagined herself floating again, weightless and calm, in a vast cosmic void. Stars sparkled around her like tiny candles in an endless ballroom. But then something unusual happened. The stars began to curve, not because they moved, but because space itself seemed to bend. A smooth voice, like a thought carried on stardust, whispered. Space has shape. We cannot always feel it, but it tells light where to go, and matter how to move. She floated above a giant invisible canvas. It changed as she moved, sometimes flat, sometimes curved like the surface of a balloon, and other times shaped like a saddle. Each form was possible. Each changed how the universe behaved. If the universe is flat, the voice explained, it will expand forever, stars drifting apart until even their light fades. If it curves inward, like a sphere, it might someday fold back in on itself. And if it curves outward, it will stretch forever into a graceful arc, never looping, always expanding. The sleepy scientist imagined light itself bending across the universe, curving with the very fabric of space. Galaxies not moving, but drifting apart because the space between them stretched. It wasn't motion. It was space expanding. She returned to her chair, heart beating gently, mind filled with questions and wonder. She scribbled a note in the dim light. Space doesn't just hold the universe, it is the universe. And then, with a sigh and a soft smile, she drifted into sleep once again. The echoes of the beginning. The sleepy scientist stood once more in her dream laboratory, surrounded by quiet hums and the soft ticking of star maps on paper scrolls. Tonight's question wasn't about where the universe was going, but where it came from. She closed her eyes, letting her breath grow slower, gentler. What echoes still linger, from the moment it all began? She found herself floating in darkness. But this time, the darkness wasn't empty. It shimmered faintly, like an afterglow. A warm, ancient light. It wasn't coming from a star or a planet, but from everything. It was the cosmic microwave background, a whisper of light from the very birth of time. This is the oldest light in the universe, a voice said softly, like a lullaby written in physics. It's the echo of the Big Bang, the afterglow of creation itself. She turned slowly, gazing across this background like a painter admiring an ancient mural. Tiny variations, warm and cool spots, danced across it like freckles on the face of time. Those slight differences, she knew, would become galaxies, stars, people. Life, born from a pattern no wider than a degree across the sky. She imagined herself cradling a thread of this ancient light. It hummed in her palm like a gentle memory. It took this light 13.8 billion years to reach us, she whispered. It's not just light, it's a message. A message that the universe once fit inside something smaller than a grain of sand. She returned to her desk and gently opened a large map, a glowing sphere marked with patterns of that old light. Not just data, but the baby picture of the cosmos. In it, she saw not just what had been, but the promise of what could still become. She tucked herself into her oversized chair, blanket wrapped tight, feeling small but peaceful. Outside, the night stretched on. The universe had spoken, and it still whispered, even now. The gravity of dreams. Tonight, the sleepy scientist found herself drawn not to the stars or the light, but to something invisible, yet immensely powerful. In her quiet lab, she gazed at an apple resting gently on her desk and smiled. Gravity. So familiar, yet so mysterious. She closed her eyes, and the dream began. She floated softly through space, no sound, no friction, just her and the silence between galaxies. But then, from far away, a subtle pull. A gentle tug on her very being. Gravity wasn't just pulling, it was shaping the universe. She drifted closer to a massive cluster of galaxies. Each one glowing softly, spinning like glowing pinwheels in the dark. Between them, gravity acted like a web, binding these islands of stars together with invisible threads. The fabric of space itself bent under their weight. A whisper reached her, mass tells space how to curve, and space tells mass how to move. It was Einstein's old mantra. And here, in this place between stars, she could feel it. Gravity wasn't just a force, it was a conversation between matter and space, a soft dialogue woven into the structure of the cosmos. She floated past a black hole, its gravity so strong that not even light could escape. But instead of fear, she felt awe. Around it, stars danced like fireflies on the edge of a whirlpool. This wasn't destruction, it was elegance, movement, balance. She reached her hand toward a soft distortion in the stars, a ripple in space itself. Gravitational waves, like soft murmurs through the fabric of time. They carried the echoes of colliding black holes, traveling for billions of years to finally arrive, gently, quietly. Back in her lab, the sleepy scientist opened her journal and sketched a curved grid, a falling apple, and the quiet swirl of galaxies. She wrote, "Gravity is the heartbeat of the cosmos. It holds stars in their dance, and feet to the ground. It whispers of connection." Outside the window, the moon climbed higher. And somewhere, across the silence of night, gravity still worked its magic, soft, unseen, and steady. Time's gentle river. Tonight, the sleepy scientist poured a cup of herbal tea and settled by the window, notebook in hand. The stars outside shimmered like tiny lanterns, and her thoughts turned to something just as elusive and vast, time. She closed her eyes, and soon, the dream carried her to the edge of a river, not one of water, but of moments. It shimmered like silver thread, flowing gently forward, unstoppable yet soft. She stood at its bank, where galaxies dipped in and out like smooth stones skipping across its surface. Time, she realized, wasn't ticking like a clock. Here, it pulsed like a heartbeat, measured not in seconds but in stories. Stars were born and died in the blink of a moment. Planets formed, cooled, and evolved. Moons wandered like curious travelers. And humans? Tiny flickers, but brilliant, beautiful ones. The sleepy scientist stepped into the river and floated. Around her, time slowed. She watched the formation of the Milky Way spiral like a dancer across billions of years. She drifted past Earth's birth, volcanoes blazing, oceans boiling, lightning dancing across clouds. A planet not yet ready for dreams, but full of potential. Further down the river, she saw the first single-celled organisms ripple into being. Then ferns unfurling. Dinosaurs wandering. Then mammals, music, fire, stories. And always, always, time flowing gently forward. She passed Einstein's desk, with equations scribbled by candlelight. A whisper drifted to her. Time is relative, it bends, it stretches, it dances with gravity. And just like that, she understood. Near massive stars, time passed more slowly. In the vacuum of intergalactic space, it glided. And inside the heart of a black hole? Time may stop altogether. She saw her own lab from above. She watched herself sip tea, write, and smile at the stars. She realized. We are all travelers in time. Cradled gently in its river. Carried toward the unknown. While leaving behind light. The dream faded. She awoke to her tea still warm, her notebook open, her heart full. Time, like space, didn't need to end, it just needed to be felt. Cosmic Symphony. In tonight's quiet journey, the sleepy scientist leans back in her observatory chair, letting the soft rustle of wind outside harmonize with the gentle ticking of her antique wall clock. Her eyes, half closed, imagine a universe not of silence, but of sound. As she drifts into slumber, her mind carries her far beyond the Milky Way. Into a place where the cosmos itself seems to sing, not with words, but with vibrations. Frequencies. A vast symphony of existence. She finds herself floating near the glowing edge of a pulsar, a spinning neutron star emitting rhythmic radio waves. Each pulse echoes like the beat of a drum in the grand orchestra of the cosmos. Steady. Profound. Further along, the wind of solar particles from a newborn star whistles like a flute. And deep in a gas cloud, gravity compresses hydrogen into the first hints of a star, releasing a low hum, like a cello warming up for a performance that will last billions of years. She floats gently through the Whale Galaxy, where swirling clouds and orbiting stars create a subtle rhythm. Even black holes, though silent to human ears, vibrate spacetime itself when they merge, sending out gravitational waves like the deepest bass notes of the universe. And Earth, our beautiful blue planet, is not silent either. Volcanoes rumble. Oceans crash and sigh. Wind howls through canyons. Whales sing. Wolves howl. Music echoes from windows. Laughter, voices, breathing, everything adds a note to Earth's part of the cosmic chorus. The sleepy scientist smiles in her dream, realizing something profound. Everything in the universe, even the emptiness, vibrates. And if it vibrates, it sings. We're all part of a grand, unending song. She envisions the universe as a single symphony, composed not in haste, but over time and gravity and light. From the Big Bang's first blare to the quiet rustle of galaxies spiraling toward their fates. As she returns from her journey, she hears her own breath, soft, steady, and perfectly in tune with the melody of life. She wakes with a renewed peace, her heart resonating with the music of everything. Whispers from the dark matter. Tonight, as the sleepy scientist curled up under her soft stargazer blanket, her thoughts drifted to one of the great mysteries of the cosmos, dark matter. What is it? Why can't we see it? And yet, why does it seem to hold everything together? With a sleepy yawn and a curious heart, she slipped once more into the dream realm of stars and silence. She opened her eyes and found herself inside an observatory, but not like any on Earth. This one floated freely in deep space, orbiting no planet, spinning gently like a ballerina in a weightless waltz. It was made of soft, glass-like walls that shimmered with nebula light. A voice greeted her, soft and familiar. "You've come to listen, haven't you?" She turned, and standing beside her was a tall figure cloaked in shadow and stardust. Its outline flickered, always there, but just out of focus. "I am dark matter," it said. "I do not glow. I do not shout. But I am always here." It beckoned her to look through a telescope, not with lenses, but woven from gravity and memory. Through it, she saw galaxies spiraling gracefully, their stars spinning faster than they should. "Why don't they fly apart?" she asked. The figure placed a gentle hand on the glass. "Because I am holding them." She watched in awe as dark filaments, the scaffolding of the cosmos, spread like an invisible web between galaxies. They weren't made of stars or light, but something deeper. Something quiet. Something constant. They floated through space where no stars shined. Just stillness. Just waiting. And yet, the sleepy scientist could feel something. Like a low hum beneath silence. Like a heartbeat in a sleeping forest. "I am the glue of galaxies," whispered the figure. "The unlit path the stars dance upon." Then, a memory surfaced. She recalled late nights in the lab when everything felt uncertain, when she wondered if her work even mattered. And yet, she kept going. "Just like you," the voice said gently. "Not all things need to be seen to hold great importance." She nodded. For the first time, she understood, just because we cannot see something doesn't mean it isn't real. Or meaningful. Or holding everything together. As she drifted back to waking, her eyes fluttered open to the golden hush of morning. She smiled softly. In her notebook, she wrote. "Even the unseen has purpose." And beneath it, in tiny script. "Dark matter dreams with us. The time travelers of light." Tonight, the sleepy scientist sat quietly beside her candlelit window, her telescope folded away, her tea warm and sweet in her hands. Outside, the stars shimmered against the velvet of space, their glow reaching her eyes from millions of years ago. She took a long breath and whispered to the night. "How far have you traveled to find me?" As her lids grew heavy and the world softened around her, she slipped into a dream, not of the future, but of the past painted in light. She found herself aboard a quiet vessel, drifting through time itself. The walls shimmered like waves, and every ripple around her was a beam of light, moving endlessly across the dark canvas of space. An elderly figure, cloaked in starlight and calm, welcomed her aboard. "Welcome to the Ark of Photons," he said, voice as warm as sunlight. "We carry stories from the beginning." Around her were shafts of light, each glowing with color, speed, and memory. The man guided her to a corridor lined with translucent doors. Behind each was a scene from long ago. Behind one door, a young star was being born, its light just now reaching Earth. Behind another, a supernova exploded in glorious silence, echoing across the cosmos for millennia. In yet another, a galaxy danced, still spinning its ancient spiral while its light painted Earth's sky with wonder. "Light is the ultimate time traveler," he explained. "It leaves home and journeys for ages, never tiring, never stopping. When you look at the stars, you're seeing the past." She stood at a window and gazed at a familiar light, one golden, flickering, like the flame of a candle. The man smiled. "That one," he said softly, "left a star just like your sun, before even the first humans walked on Earth." She felt a quiet awe, realizing that every starlit sky was a library of time. That in every sparkle was a secret, a memory, a message from the deep past, patiently waiting to be seen. Back on Earth, as dawn brushed the horizon, the sleepy scientist awoke gently to the warmth of sunlight on her face. She reached for her journal and wrote. "Light remembers. We are always seeing echoes." Then she added, with a sleepy smile. "And perhaps, one day, our light will shine for someone else too." The cosmic quilt. The sleepy scientist sat curled in her reading nook, the soft hum of nighttime insects buzzing outside her window. Wrapped in a faded quilt stitched by her grandmother, she traced the patterns in the fabric, swirls and stars, suns and moons, stitched in silver thread. "Every square tells a story," she thought. "Much like the universe itself." She closed her eyes and drifted into a deep, gentle sleep, and in her dream, the quilt expanded, unfolding into the very fabric of the cosmos. She found herself standing at the center of a great hall, vast and quiet, its walls formed of shifting galaxies. Before her stretched a patchwork unlike any other, the cosmic quilt, a tapestry of time and space. Each patch pulsed with life and light. One square showed a distant planet blanketed in sapphire clouds. Another rippled with the rings of Saturn, carved in thread as delicate as frost. A third was woven with deep black, interrupted only by a blinking quasar stitched in golden flame. An elderly woman appeared, her robe a mirror of the sky, her hands glowing with gentle starlight. She spoke in a whisper that echoed through dimensions. "This quilt is never finished. Each galaxy adds its square. Each thought, each breath, each star born, woven in." She guided the sleepy scientist across the vast tapestry. Beneath her feet, the universe stretched and stirred. Nebulae billowed like dyed cotton. Spiral galaxies twirled like embroidered fans. Everything had a place, every black hole, every breeze of cosmic dust, sewn into the edges of eternity. "Does space end?" the sleepy scientist asked. The woman smiled. "No. It simply keeps unfolding. The universe grows like this quilt, expanding with every moment, every question, every wonder." In the center, there was a single, unfinished square. A needle floated beside it, glowing softly. "This one's yours," she said. The sleepy scientist took the needle. With quiet joy, she stitched a swirling sun, a sleepy crescent moon, and a spiral galaxy tucked gently behind. She added a tiny figure, herself, curled in sleep under a starlit sky. When she was done, the thread shimmered and sank into the fabric, as if the quilt had always known it would be there. She awoke to morning sunlight brushing her face and the soft warmth of her grandmother's quilt still around her shoulders. But something had changed. The stars stitched in silver seemed to glow faintly in the daylight. She touched them and whispered. Still expanding, just like us. The multiverse garden. The night was quiet, and the sleepy scientist stood beneath a sky brushed with purples and navy blues, stars peeking out like whispers. The hum of her small telescope filled the room, gently scanning the sky. How can something so vast feel so familiar, she wondered. Her eyes grew heavy. The warmth of the galaxy-shaped pillow beneath her cheek lulled her deeper into dreams, into a place beyond even her waking imagination. She found herself in a garden that defied every law she knew. The sky above was fragmented, shimmering like glass catching light from 1,000 different suns. Each petal, leaf, and blade of grass glowed softly, pulsing in a rhythm that felt ancient yet comforting. Where am I? A woman approached, her robe woven with the shifting colors of distant nebulae. She smiled and knelt beside a small glowing vine. Welcome to the garden between universes, she said. Each flower here is a world. Every bloom, a universe unfolding its own story. The sleepy scientist gasped as a flower opened before her, revealing a swirling galaxy within. In one, oceans floated in the sky and stars grew on trees. In another, beings of pure light sang time into existence. In a third, Earth was a dream inside a sleeping giant's mind. Each universe was slightly different, like variations on a song played by the cosmos. Some were full of life. Some, silent and still. Some were eerily familiar. Is this the multiverse? She whispered. The woman nodded. Some say it's the mind of the universe dreaming. Others believe it's every possibility blooming at once. She showed the sleepy scientist a trail of flowers with petals unfurled, paths that she might have taken in other versions of herself. Some where she became a poet, others where she studied whales, or built stargazing temples on faraway moons. But only here, only now, are you this version. The one who listens. The one who wonders. As they walked deeper, she noticed one flower slightly dim, its petals curling inward. That universe is tired, the woman said. It's missing curiosity. When we stop asking questions, universes go quiet. The sleepy scientist reached out gently, whispering, "What if?" The flower bloomed open, golden light flowing from its heart. The woman smiled. That's all it takes. She awoke with the soft scent of jasmine in her room. Her telescope stood still, the stars outside blinking sleepily. She whispered to herself. The multiverse might be vast, but I only need one universe to dream in. And as she returned to sleep once more, the garden bloomed again, quietly, beyond all space and time. The cosmic tapestry. That evening, the sleepy scientist sat quietly in her study, the pages of an old astronomy book open in her lap. On one page, a question had been scrawled in faded ink. If space is endless, what holds it all together? She smiled softly. A question like that was like a lullaby for the mind, an invitation to wander. She closed her eyes and breathed in the calm, steady rhythm of the stars outside her window. She drifted into sleep and awoke within a place that wasn't quite a room, or a field, or a sky, but something beautifully in between. Above and around her stretched an enormous, glowing tapestry, floating in stillness. It shimmered with threads of light, crimson, blue, gold, and silver, interwoven into an intricate design. The threads pulsed with life, like they were breathing. A voice spoke from within the quiet. This is the weave of existence. Every thread, a connection. Every pattern, a possibility. She turned to see an elderly weaver sitting on a gentle breeze, their fingers delicately working a loom that wasn't made of wood or metal, but of starlight and gravity. The weaver beckoned her closer. We're often taught to think of space as empty, they said. But the cosmos is not blank, it's braided. Gravity, dark matter, light, they all bind together in the weave. They showed her a section where the threads curved tightly. Here's a galaxy. See how the fabric gathers? Then they pointed to a sparse, open section, yet threads still ran across it, nearly invisible. And here's the void. But even here, the threads continue. Nothing is ever truly alone. She noticed something else. Some threads were old and faded, while others sparkled like newborn stars. Some were tangled, others straight and smooth. "Do we make these threads?" she asked. The weaver nodded. "Every choice, every wonder, every breath adds to the pattern. You, dear one, have already added much." The sleepy scientist leaned closer, noticing a glimmering silver thread that vibrated when she asked, "What if space doesn't end? What if it folds?" The thread rippled across the entire fabric. Stars blinked, galaxies tilted slightly. "Ah," said the weaver. "That is how new questions become new patterns." A gentle wind passed through the tapestry, and with it came warmth and stillness. The sleepy scientist felt herself begin to float, tucked between threads of curiosity and comfort. As the weaver vanished into starlight, a final whisper followed. "The universe is not held by walls, but by wonder." She awoke, her blanket wrapped around her like a thread in the great weave. Outside, a shooting star arced across the sky, one more stitch in the fabric of forever. She whispered, "I am part of something vast. Something beautiful." And with that, her eyes closed again, and she dreamt of tapestries made of stars. A whisper from the multiverse. In the stillness of early night, the sleepy scientist sat by her favorite window, sipping warm tea. The stars above twinkled with their usual gentle rhythm, but something in the sky tonight felt different, wider, more layered. Almost as if the stars were echoes of others. She closed her eyes, letting sleep slowly arrive like a soft tide. She awoke in a place where stars whispered. Not spoke. Not sang. But whispered. It was a gentle rustling, like the sound of leaves in a summer forest, but deeper. She floated in a dark sky streaked with rivers of color, purples, teals, and soft gold. Around her, bubbles shimmered in the distance, each one filled with an entire universe. "This," said a voice beside her, "is the boundary where one cosmos brushes against another." She turned. A being stood beside her, not man, not woman, not creature at all. But a soft outline formed entirely of swirling light, like starlight caught in mist. "You're in the membrane between realities. A meeting point of multiverses." The sleepy scientist blinked in wonder. One bubble floated close. Inside it, she saw a version of herself, but younger, with silver blue hair and glowing fingertips, walking on clouds of light. Another passed. Inside, Earth was ringed with 2 moons. In another, life bloomed not from carbon, but from crystal. She gasped. "Are these real?" "As real as wonder," the being replied. "Each universe is its own possibility, its own question." "And how many are there?" she asked. The being simply smiled. "Does the ocean count its waves?" They drifted through the in-between, past a bubble where stars orbited trees, and another where sound shaped planets. "Sometimes," the being continued, "your universe hears the faintest ripple from its neighbors. A flash of déjà vu, a dream that makes no sense, a discovery that feels like it came from nowhere." "Echoes of the multiverse," the sleepy scientist whispered. The being nodded. "And you, dear one, are a listener. A dreamer. One who hears more than most." Suddenly, a feeling of peace washed over her. Not confusion or fear, but quiet awe. "So, does space end?" "Not with a wall," said the being, "but with a whisper. And beyond the whisper, more stories." As she slowly drifted back toward sleep, she heard one last whisper across the stars. "The universe is not one thing, it is many voices, all humming softly together. She awoke, tucked gently beneath her blanket, the stars outside still shimmering. But now, they seemed to shimmer with company. And she smiled, knowing she'd heard their song. The edge of time. The night was especially quiet. The sleepy scientist lay beneath a velvety blanket of stars, their ancient light dripping through her telescope like dew from the heavens. Her mind wandered, gently rocked by the question she could never quite silence. What lies at the very edge of time? She closed her eyes, her breath sinking with the soft ticking of the old clock beside her bed. Tick, tock, tick. And then, once again, she was dreaming. She stood in a boundless chamber of twilight, neither day nor night, neither past nor future. It was the chronoscape, where time unspooled like golden thread through the vast corridors of the cosmos. Before her stood an archway made of starlight and silence, pulsing softly. "Where am I?" she whispered. "At the temporal threshold," said a calm, resonant voice. "Beyond this is the end of time. Or the beginning. Depending on how you walk." A luminous figure, robed in constellations and nebulae, stood beside her. Their face was ageless, eyes deep like wells of memory. "What happens there?" she asked. "All things return to stillness," the figure replied. "Moments rest. Stars sleep. Galaxies become quiet memories. But time is never truly gone. It becomes story." She stepped through the archway, and the air changed. Time no longer ticked or flowed, it shimmered. She saw moments frozen in crystal clarity. A dinosaur taking its final breath beneath a fiery sky. A girl in the year 3200 writing her first love poem in zero gravity. A black hole yawning into nothingness, then blinking like a sleepy eye. All time, past and future, was here, floating like snowflakes in a slow, eternal swirl. "Is this the end?" she asked, eyes wide. "It is the farthest edge," said the timekeeper. "But not an end in the way your mind thinks. It's a resting place. A turning page. A silence before the next breath." The sleepy scientist felt herself grow lighter, as though her thoughts were dissolving into quiet stardust. Her own timeline stretched behind her, a glowing thread connecting childhood, stargazing nights, quiet tears, bursts of laughter, every unanswered question and every bold wonder. And there, at the edge, she felt no fear. Only gentleness. "If all time must end," she said softly, "I'm glad it ends like this." "It doesn't end," the timekeeper smiled. "It sleeps. Just like you will." She drifted back, time folding quietly around her like a lullaby. Back through the starlit door, through the memory chamber, and into her warm bed. The stars above blinked lazily, as if they too were nodding off. And in that final breath before sleep, the sleepy scientist thought. Perhaps time doesn't need to end. Maybe it just dreams too. The place beyond the stars. The sleepy scientist lay in bed as the last moments of twilight faded. A soft wind rustled through her open window, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine and a whisper from the cosmos. "Tonight," she murmured, "we go farther than we've ever gone." Her eyelids grew heavy. One deep breath. Then another. And then, in the quiet blink between thoughts, she began to dream. She found herself standing at the edge of space. Not just of galaxies or clusters, but beyond the very structure of the known universe. No more stars. No more time. Just, pure stillness. There was no floor, no ceiling. Yet she stood with confidence. She was cloaked in a robe woven from cosmic threads, memories of every journey she'd taken, through gravity, time, stars, plants, sound, and now, through the end itself. In front of her was a mirror. But not a mirror of glass. It was made of understanding. Reflection. Truth. She peered into it and saw, herself, as a child, lying in bed with her first stargazing book. Then older, peering through a telescope. Laughing. Crying. Exploring. Asking. The mirror whispered. You have wandered far, but this is the final lesson. She stepped forward and passed through the mirror. And what she saw on the other side was not an ending. It was another beginning. An entirely new universe. Different colors. Different physics. Time moved like music, not like seconds. Stars were born from dreams, not dust. Welcome, said a voice that was neither young nor old. You have asked if space ends. But endings are illusions built by finite minds. Then what is this place? She asked. This is possibility, the voice said gently. The garden where questions blossom into worlds. The sleepy scientist walked through this new reality, each step forming galaxies beneath her feet. Her thoughts painted moons. Her wonder lit suns. And then she stopped, looked up, and saw an entire cosmos, hers, folding into the next page of a never-ending story. Back in her bed, the sleepy scientist stirred softly, wrapped in her blanket of stars. The universe outside remained vast and mysterious, but she no longer needed to chase every answer. Because she knew something now. Space may not end, but it gently hands us the quiet gift of wonder. And in that wonder, we rest.